morning guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm at a very interesting place. I'm in the mountains of Barskoon, which is in the southwest of the southern part of Lake Issyk Kul. Lake Issyk Kul is somewhere over there. But I have such an interesting place for you. This is the Barskoon Valley. Everybody knows the infamous name Yuri Gagarin. Shiba, who is Yuri Gagarin?
I always learned my school. He's the first person to go to space.
First person to go to space, very good. You don't even have to go to school to learn that. But Yuri Gagarin, of course, yes, first person Russian cosmonaut to go to space, first person to orbit the planet. Not the first animal, not the first human in space though, because the Soviet Union sent up a dog first, a dog Layla. But he was the first human to complete the orbit. When he returned from that very famous flight, he became very famous instantly, of course. Everybody in the world knew his name. And pretty much everywhere that he went became super famous. And so one of those places, Yuri Gagarin, one of his favorite places in the world, was here on the banks of Lake Issyk Kul. And one of the first places he came was back over here, onto this rock, which, like I said, after he went anywhere, pretty much wherever he stepped turned into a monument. And that's what this place is. So supposedly he came in and walked on this rock when he returned, and promptly when he left, then the locals carved it into his likeness. I know, Shubham, we could climb up it.
Ah, really?
I suppose we could, yeah.
Are we allowed?
I mean, who's watching? It's never a good thing. But he walked on it, so why can't we walk on it? Yuri Gagarin. That
This is you. It's in Russian.
Yeah. And then Gagarin. I-N, like
yeah.
Minsk,
Yeah.
and like Radno. Gagarin. When you find a spot to set up the GoPro, I'll tell you a story. So let me tell you a little bit about the tale of Yuri Gagarin. Of course, Yuri Gagarin is one of the most famous people in all of Russia, for good reason. So Yuri Gagarin had a very humble roots. There's this great story. He was from a small village, and he took that famous space flight in 1961. So he grew up when he was a kid during the Nazi occupation, or when the Nazis were trying to push into USSR during World War II. And of course, there was lots of going back and forth over Ukraine and the Belarus lands. In Belarus, 1 in 3 people died at the hands of the Nazis. When the Nazis pushed through, they just razed villages, burned everything down, raped women. It was just absolutely horrible. A lot of cities in Belarus have monuments for that, for all the people that died, and they'll just list just like the entire family lineage, like the Nazis just wiped out entire families. But Yuri Gagarin's village was right in the path of that. And so when the Nazis came, he and his family hid under their farmhouse underneath hay, and they stayed there for 8 days until the Nazis left and they re-emerged. So obviously he had like that patriotism in him like his entire life, standing up for his country. Anyway, so fast forward a few years, he got involved in the space program, of course. Like I said, 1961 is when this flight happened. So in a few months prior to that, he was with a group of other cosmonauts. There was 3 cosmonauts that they were picking between, and they selected him. They announced it 4 days before the mission. But for like several months before that, he was the favorite, and everyone liked him the most. He was the most skilled. He was the most charismatic too. They selected him 4 days before, and he used to be such a jovial, like a happy kind of guy. But as soon as they announced that it would be him going up to space, he got like he started becoming more solemn, more quiet. I wonder if this wind is going to be too bad for the video. It's too bad. The wind. The wind's getting a little too loud, so I'm going to come hide behind Yuri over here. No, that's where the wind is too. No more wind there. Okay, there's wind in the entire valley. I have an idea of a place that I can go. We'll go down into the frozen riverbed. Oh, please don't fall in, please don't fall in, please don't fall in. Hopefully it's quieter over here. Okay, yeah, okay, this is much better. You can still kind of see Yuri over there. Okay, hiding from the wind now. The wind is a little bit too strong. But, okay, so then they finally picked Yuri, and they said that he would be the one that would go up. There was lots of course, training, and they went over the last flight plan a few more times. And then the night before, They ran over it one last time, and then they told him just relax. So they got all of his friends together. They gave him some whiskey, or vodka actually, and some cigars. And they just told him just to relax, sit by the fireplace, just talk about childhood stories, just to kind of decompress. And so he went to bed at 9 o'clock. Next morning, they woke him up at 7 a.m. And they brought him over to the capsule. They say that he had a good night of sleep, but Yuri said in his own biography that that he couldn't sleep at all that night. Underneath the bridge. So then the morning then, 7 a.m. they put him into the capsule, the Vokstuk rocket. Vokstuk is actually so Antarctica was discovered by a Russian explorer, and his ship that went down to Antarctica was called the Vokstuk, so it's a symbolic kind of thing, the discovery. Anyway, so then they put him into the capsule at 7 a.m. They closed the hatch. Yuri said, hey, the hatch isn't closed, put it on again. So they took off the entire door, put on a new door, put on some new bolts, and they had him all strapped in so that he could take off at 9 o'clock Moscow time, or 9:07 or something, because they needed to time it up perfectly so that when he went onto the other side of the planet, that as he comes through the dark side, that it's going to basically be like a sunrise again, and when the sun hits the rocket, then it helps, the machinery could help align it on the path where they're supposed to go, because it was all such rudimentary machinery. But anyway, so then they shot him off at 9 o'clock, and there's a great video. I don't know if I can find the clip of it, but where he's strapped into the rocket, and you can hear the rocket go, and he screams out, it's like, Poyekali. Yeah, which is basically like let's roll, or it's almost like divide, which is let's go, but let's roll. And that became like such an iconic phrase after that. Like people all around the world saying let's roll, let's roll. Yeah, so then they shot him off 9:07. The entire flight only took like 80 minutes. So basically he started, I'll throw up a map actually. So then he started in like Kazakhstan. They shot him off east towards Siberia, go across Russia. And then at that point, then they went diagonally down across the Pacific Islands, basically over the Hawaiian Islands, and then they hooked under, I think it's the Magellan Passage, I can't remember the name of the passage, underneath South America, the Drake Passage maybe, and then it brought him back up over the Atlantic, and he crossed into Africa over Namibia. Namibia, he kept going up towards Egypt at the northeast corner, and then in Egypt, then they started going down towards, I think Kazakhstan was supposed to be the planned landing site. He actually landed in like eastern Russia, or western Russia, in Samara. The flight was only like 81 minutes, and like I said, when he came over Egypt, then they started going down, and the way that it was like this spherical kind of capsule that he was going down in, but that's when they started hitting like I don't know if turbulence is the right word for a spacecraft, but he started hitting around. At that point, he was experiencing 8 Gs. 8 Gs is like so intense. Like if he's going down, like his face is pulling back, and of course he's burning. Like the capsule is like getting super hot as it's re-entering the atmosphere. The plan, of course, was to land over in, I think it was Kazakhstan, because that's like where the Space Command was. But the USSR didn't disclose any of these locations, obviously, because they wanted to keep it all secret. But they couldn't really line it up, and he landed over Samara, like I said, in the southwest, kind of over by like Chechnya. The reason for that route, like going across Africa, going up across Africa, over Russia, and it would continue then going over Siberia with the Coriolis effect. And the reason for that was that if they missed the orbit entry, that he would stay in orbit until it naturally falls in, and it would take about 10 days going over that loop. So then he'd have over half a day's worth of being over land before it goes over the Pacific and away from all the command. The USSR actually back at this time had no mission command outside of the USSR. So the only radio towers and everything to contact them was only in the USSR. Once he was on the other side of the planet, they couldn't talk to him. And he would give, even during the flight, he was giving commands, but none of them received. They got logged on the capsule. But anyway, so as he was coming into land, he missed the landing site, and about 7 kilometers up, then he pulled the parachutes. Actually, one other thing that's really kind of interesting is that yes, Yuri was super skilled. Like I said, he was like the best of the class. He was the best astronaut for this. Of course, it had a lot of machinery in there, but the Soviet scientists and just all the scientists, they didn't know how weightlessness would affect not only just how he acts physically, but also like mentally. So very interestingly, the ship was actually set on auto command, and they can control it actually also from Russia. They did put the panel in there with all the buttons, but it didn't do anything, which I think is kind of interesting. In a worst case scenario, they did have a small envelope in there that had like a code to unlock it so that he could do things with it. It was like 125, but I don't know, I guess it wasn't really needed. So he pulled the parachutes then, and as it was coming down, the official version of the story, the propaganda version from USSR, is that he landed the capsule all in one because in order to clench the world record for orbit had to be that you had to exit and land back in the capsule. And so the USSR then says that yes, he landed in the capsule. About 10 years later, they revised the story to say that not only did he miss the landing site, but also that about 7 kilometers up, he ejected from the capsule and he parachuted down separately with his own parachute. And also the propaganda version of the story is that when he landed in this capsule, and a farmer, like a local villager, a farmer and his daughter, like came up walking up, and they were so like scared because there's this big silver capsule landing in the middle of the field, and they walked over to it and it's burning hot, you know. They opened the capsule, and Yuri in his orange suit, you know, gets out, and supposedly, according to the propaganda version, he says to the people something along the lines of like, "Don't be afraid, I'm not an alien, I am a Soviet citizen just like you." And then he said like, "Give me a phone, I need to call Moscow," because they didn't know where he landed. But anyway, so after this whole story then, of course he became like an international celebrity. Everyone in the world knew the name Yuri Gagarin. The USSR sent him on like a world tour of sorts where he went to go visit heads of states, and he was getting all kinds of medals. He got the highest award, of course, in the USSR. In fact, actually, he's buried in the wall of the Kremlin, along near other, you know, like Lenin is also, he has his own mausoleum by the Kremlin wall. But he was getting awards from like, even like the Queen of England gave him an award. Queen Elizabeth met Yuri Gagarin, but he never went to the United States. The United States did officially congratulate him though, because it was such a monumental achievement. In fact, JFK said it was a technical achievement. Anyway, so then after this famous spaceflight, wherever he went in the world became famous. Any ground that Yuri Gagarin stepped on was hallowed ground, and that's what caused this building, or this rock. So again, he came out here. Issyk Kul was apparently one of his favorite places in the world, and so this rock, the locals say that Yuri Gagarin landed here, and I guess up until a few years ago, one might assume that because the USSR story was so confusing and convoluted, I think it's pretty likely that he didn't land here. But what is true that he did come out and he did like this land, and whatever land he stepped on became famous. It's an interesting testament to that. To conclude this little story, after this whole space flight, the USSR never let him fly to space ever again, because they were so worried that he would die, and especially since he was such a national icon, a world icon, that if he died, it would just be catastrophic to the moral. And actually, you know, because it was such a dangerous thing, when Yuri shot off, he was surprisingly very calm that morning, but all of the people that were running the machinery were so afraid. The chief officer, they had to give him pills just to calm him down, because at that point the USSR had shot up 24 spacecraft, and of those 24, 12 of them had been destroyed. 12 of them exploded, 12 of them crashed on re-entry. And even after Yuri finished his flight, one of the next people that went up, when he was coming down, they couldn't line it up properly, and this guy says like on the radio something along the lines of like, you're killing me," because it was burning hot in there, the radiation, and this flaming ball of a capsule then smashed in the ground and he died instantly. So of course they didn't want the same thing to happen to Yuri, so they told him he could never be in the space program again. But he of course loved flying, and because he was a pilot, and they allowed him to fly MiGs, the fighter jets. And I think it was 3 years later or so, just a few years after the space flight, he was flying on a training flight with another guy, and supposedly they were like flying low on the ground, and the USSR version is just like something happened, like there was some mistake and they crashed, but like the official story is that I think they were going along, and there was like a farmer or a small crop plane or something that got in the way, and with their fighter jet, then they pulled up quickly, and it let off a whole chain of things that, of course, they crashed then. But anyway, it's a very interesting story. It's interesting to go from the place that Yuri was born to coming here, like a place that another place that he stepped his foot on. So now I guess I just need to go to the place where he died to get the full story. But it's a very interesting place, a very, very beautiful site here, a monument to Yuri Gagarin.